Well, the European Union will put on hold for 90 days its first countermeasures against Donald Trump's tariffs. There has been a sharp rise in global markets around the world after the US president announced a last-minute pause of its own on most reciprocal tariffs. But in a retaliatory turn of events, President Trump hiked tariffs on even further on 125% on China following Beijing's imposition of 84% tariffs on US goods. Alicia Garcia Herrero is chief economist for Asia Pacific at Natixis and joins us now from Paris. Alicia, welcome to the program. Now, firstly, this news out of Europe by announcement by Ursula von der Leyen came a short time ago about the European Union now pausing for 90 days its countermeasures against the US. This news must be welcomed in your part of the world.
Well, absolutely. Europe was very short of actually retaliating nearly as much as China, at least at European levels, so 25% as opposed to 20 plus 10 for the US. So you can imagine how lucky, in a way, Europe was not to go too quickly on this retaliation. Although I have to say, I still believe that China would have been singled out anyway. This is really cornering China in a very high tariff environment. But now Europe has to think, what is Europe ready to offer to keep those tariffs at, the general 10% tariffs as everybody else? And this will not be easy because, and this is obviously true for Australia, we're market economies. Yeah, we can't tell our companies what to purchase and to switch from country A to country B, being in the United States. So it's not going to be easy. I think one of the things that the US might request generally across the board is really to cut off Chinese imports, to de-risk from China, if not decouple. And that is going to be a major issue for every country, including the European Union, to discuss.
Well, surely, most economies in Europe won't go for that because of the size of China's economy and the fact that it will, in a few years' time, be the world's biggest.
Well, I mean, we could have a long discussion as to whether China will be the largest economy in the world, but it doesn't really matter. China is a very big market. It's the second largest market in the world. It is, however, not Europe's largest market, export-wise. Europe exports much more to the US, invests much more into the US, and most importantly, receives much more investment from the US than from China. So the question is, why choose? And I think I think Ursula von der Leyen's call on de-risking is still valid. The de-risking only means diversification. So reducing critical dependencies that Europe has on China for its green transition. We're extremely dependent on Chinese inputs. I think all of that can still hold and perhaps help in the discussions with Donald Trump without going all the way into decoupling, by all means and purposes. That would be a terrible idea for Europe.
Yes, Alicia, as we speak, European stocks are making very big gains today, echoing the Asian markets as well. How would you describe investor sentiments at the moment in such an unpredictable environment, particularly with the Trump presidency?
Yes. Frankly, I think it's just a respite. I'm sorry to be negative. It's a relief. It's a feeling of relief, but it's not a feeling of confidence. Let's not get this wrong. Everybody knows that Trump could come with all kinds of ideas beyond tariffs. The market has seen a sell-off in the U.S. Treasury market. This is a big thing. The dollar is still the reserve currency. This is very dangerous for the world, also for European financial institutions, because everybody needs dollar. So in that regard, I think just call it a respite rather than, a new return of confidence structurally. We're not there yet.
Yes, so Europe and a number of countries outside in other parts of the world have that respite, but not in the case of China. They are clearly in this very intense trade war with the US. Who do you think might be worse for wear?
So now, China has no respite, you're right. But China has a long game, not a short game. China is now, by retaliating at the very same level as the US, telling the US, I'm not buying this. I know you're weak, and the US is weak now. the U.S. economy could enter a recession. The U.S. Treasury market has just gone through a sell-off, and China knows all of that. So I think China is just saying, you can't really harm me too much. I've been, this is the mantra of U.S. Of the Chinese government now. I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this. So, and they indeed prepared for this for a very long time. So, the U.S. has to recognize that China is playing a long game. And that is a very dangerous issue because China has leeway, has leverage to start huge amount of U.S. treasuries. Secondly, a currency they could devalue. Third, perhaps Taiwan.
And just finally, as far as the U.S. economy is concerned, the R word has been used quite often in the past few weeks. So are economists forecasting, a possible recession in America?
Some are, but they don't put that number out there, let me tell you. And this is the new US. What they do is they increase their probability. They tell you, I moved from 40% probability to 60% probability. Then you should be forecasting a recession. If your probability is more than 50, you should go for it. But economists are not going for that, and much less so after the lifting of the tariffs, temporary lifting of the tariffs yesterday, because they knew the market was going to come back. But the risk of recession is real. And most importantly, the risk of a massive shortage of demand on U.S. treasuries because of the massive issuance that is needed on the fourth quarter this year brings a lot of uncertainties to the U.S. So in that regard, I think we are in very interesting times. I hope the U.S. makes it, but I also hope that the Trump administration pauses a little bit in putting pressure on the reserve currency and talking about restructuring, you name it, swaps, and things that are not very welcome for investors anywhere in the world holding U.S. treasuries.
Okay, Alicia Herrero in Paris, thank you so much for your analysis.
Thank you.